For our next session, I'd like to introduce Mr. Pawan Bakhshi to the stage. Pawan is the India country lead for financial services for the poor at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been a key supporter of digital financial inclusion globally and invested more in India than in any other country besides the United States. Pawan is a thought leader in inclusive finance, focusing on finding innovative ways to expand access and usage and encouraging markets to determine which products and channels are effective. He's a pioneer in digital financial services, co-created India's first mobile wallet, and has sat on several Reserve Bank of India committees on financial inclusion. So please join me in welcoming Pawan.
Hi everyone, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Jayshree and the CFI, to invite me here. It's really a pleasure. And I'm actually more thrilled that it's happening in person and happening in India, right? And I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everybody here who's coming here, either coming here for the first time or coming back. Welcome to India and welcome to Bengaluru. You've been kind of extremely lucky to see the weather here. If this was in Delhi, it'll be about 45 degrees right now. So I'm glad it's happening in Bangalore. Coming back to the topic, in the past about 10 years, inclusive finance sector has seen a lot of acceleration, and the Queen spoke about it, and we'll hear it across the next 2 days as well. And that's largely been driven by a technical revolution and development of digital solutions by the way of either public infrastructure or the fintechs and other ecosystem players. In the past 6 years alone, 1.2 billion people have gained access to bank account or mobile money accounts in the world. Large part of them in the LMICs. Now, India has played a large role in facilitating this acceleration, and thanks to its enabling policy and regulation and technical skills, we've now got about 80% of adults in India who have a bank account, and without a gender gap. And there is no gender gap and no differences in either urban, rural, or men and women, which is a huge, I think, a win. But what we are also seeing is that there is an increased focus towards improving usage levels, which is work in progress. So I think usage is the access to accounts is important because it allows you to start usage, but usage is not kind of automatic, right? So as the Queen said, most people use the account for the first time to either receive wages or government payments into those accounts, and that is a trigger for it to start getting used. In the early days, when we started to talk about digital, the whole discussion was around whether or not a technology and digital solutions could provide a low-cost way to build economic resilience and pull people out of poverty. I think we are seeing results now that I'm sure most of you would have gone and read the work of Jack and Suri's research in Kenya, which talks about that, in between 2008 and 2014, about 2% of all Kenyan households move out of poverty. Right. Now that's a huge number. We've not done enough research yet to identify that in India, but if we spoke about 2% in India, it'll be a large number, right? The scales of a very different kind of an order here. I think one of the important things that we've done in India is the creation of the digital public infrastructure, which includes the ID system, real-time payments, and the data architecture that we are creating, supported by regulatory and policy reforms, which have accelerated the process. let's talk about the two most important DPIs which India has, which is the ID system and the payment system. The ID system now has enrolled about 1.4 billion people who can now easily prove who they are, and online authentication and authorization can easily be done. And on the other hand, we have the UPI now, which is clocking about 9 billion transactions a month, right? And growing. So it's on both the things initially to say that this was tech. Will it be able to see scale? Would people take to it and stuff like that? What we've seen is that if facilities are made available, people who had either no access to other channels or people who had access to other channels as well adopt to situations and products and processes if they're beneficial. I think at the end of the day, it's about the value that these tools bring to the individuals, to businesses, and to governments. Just as an example, the Queen spoke about it as well, and I'm just going to repeat it, that this infrastructure along with the Aadhaar-enabled payment system really helped about 300 million poor people in India, especially women, who received funds during COVID at a drop of a hat. Within 2 weeks of announcing a strict national lockdown, the government of India could move funds into accounts of these people in a seamless way. Now, this wouldn't have been possible in delivering cash, which is almost impossible to do given that India is spread over about 3.29 million square kilometers. It's almost impossible to get to access and reach there. And plus, when the whole world was talking about no contact transactions and staying away from other, because you had to keep a physical distance from people, it's almost impossible to do that. Right? So I think there, India, the investments which India made in the digital public infrastructure came good. Right? And India is not alone in the DPI ecosystem as of today. There are various components of the ecosystem, which about more than 180 to about 200 odd countries are building already. And the importance of emergency cash transfers is not lost at all, and a lot of countries who are seeing what is the best way of delivering it. However, much work needs to be done, and which is probably the reason why we are in the room and we are here, is to talk about what else needs to get done. So while the digital infrastructure increases access, reduces cost of transaction, allows business model innovation, it does see continuation of some old risks and emergence of new ones. I'll just highlight how the digital public infrastructure actually reduces cost. In terms of the ID system, if you did the KYC for your customer in the analog world, in India, you could be spending upwards of about $10 in doing a single KYC. With Aadhaar, that cost has dropped to 10 cents. That suddenly the graph changes, and the private sector providers who would be very wary of spending $10 on a poor customer to just KYC and not just onboard, are now suddenly, they woke up to say that at 10 cents it makes sense to onboard them. So suddenly a tool has enabled access and inclusion of people who would otherwise be struggling to get into the ecosystem. Right? In a similar way, what we are now seeing is that just the fact that we have gone digital, the way that it's been picked up by a lot of people, and digital is new to a lot of people that we care about in low and middle income households. Both being new to digital and new to formal financial services ensures that they need to build a new muscle. Right? It's not that what they've learned in the past in historical. It does need some hand-holding, some level of building trust and confidence in the ecosystem, in the tools, in the service providers and everything else around it. And I think the women in the most vulnerable groups could be more disadvantaged if they are not a part of the design phase itself. So I think it's important to start to think about it right from the time we start thinking about what we need to do and not as an afterthought. I think more importantly, products and services and distribution must work at the last mile consistently, sustainably, responsibly, and without compromising on quality. We cannot say that, oh, since this is deep down in the rural areas, we are unable to provide our services, because the Indian ecosystem, and I'm sure it'll work elsewhere in the world as well, has gone to the last mile and gone and provided enough coverage for transactions to happen. And where it's not happening, the private sector and the other providers are coming in to say what could be done in a way that can work there. As an example, NPCI, which is the National Payment Corporation of India, has launched what they call as UPI Lite, which is actually cash on the wallet. So you don't even need a network to transact. Now, those are the innovations which have to come from the ecosystem enabled by the digital public infrastructure. Over the next 2 days, the RFF will focus on several key areas that can strengthen the digital ecosystem, which includes responsible payments, responsible credit, high reliability, affordable costs, consumer protection, cybersecurity, all important things, right? There is a need to build customer confidence and trust in the formal ecosystem, and we must think about what are those key things. And it could be, some things could be as simple as communication and awareness. How does that reach the last mile, and how do the people really understand what they're talking about, right? More than this, I would urge us to think of a couple of other related areas as well. And I'm sorry I'm being a little bit provocative here, but I'm enticed by this august audience here and the ability of these people to be the movers and shakers in this ecosystem and be able to change the way a lot of other people can think and influence and advocate for a lot of changes. I think one is that, have we reached a stage where we are talking about responsible finance being a multi-regulator environment, not just a single regulator environment? And I'll give you an example. If you're talking of digital, you're talking of telecom, you're talking of finance, you're talking of big tech. They're not all regulated. Some of them are into financial services without being a regulated entity as they're connected. But these are complexities of the emerging world. Right? Is there a need to do that, and is therefore should we expand our scope to cover other regulators as well? I think the other is should responsible finance be mandated versus should it be the prerogative of the service provider and the investor initiatives? Right? Is that the trigger to this? Because the key thing is that if as a service provider, my customer protection is better and I'm much more responsible, shouldn't I be drawing a lot more customers to myself and hence increasing revenues and profits in any way by still being responsible? Right? Is that an opportunity? Can we also imagine when a customer protection initiatives or practices become a public good, which means that as a service provider, I've gone and done stuff, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to reinvent the wheel. What can we do to accelerate this? How can things change? Right? And change in a faster, accelerated way. We at the Gates Foundation are now at a stage where we are exploring how customer protection can be a barrier for DFS usage. So we are trying to get our heads around to say, is there something that we should intervene in, we should explore doing, we should partner doing, and how that could change or accelerate usage for the LMI households and individuals, and specifically women, which means including building trust and confidence and the ecosystem to be reliable and strong and safe. India, with its several initiatives, has multiple lessons to offer, and I'm glad several of you went for the field visit yesterday. You saw India Post, RBIH, you saw folks at Canara Capital and MOSIP, right? We work with several of them, and I think it's an opportunity which India offers to the rest of the world, and I'm glad that is coinciding with the presidency of G20, which India has, where the government of India has pushed for DPI to be a core and a central focus, not just in India, but I think the rest of the world as well, especially in South-South cooperation. With that, it's my great honor to introduce Mr. Chanchal Sarkar. He's the GPFI lead, the G20 Global Partnership of Financial Inclusion, and the economic advisor at the Department of Economic Affairs in the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Welcome to you, sir. And Mr. Sarkar has also recently been elected as a G20 GPFI co-chair for the next 3 years, 2024 to 2026. And he has a long history of working on issues of finance, trade, economy, has worked in various capacities in the Ministry of Commerce, in Ministry of Finance, and on multilateral and regional issues, including the WTO and EU-related topics. And I've had the pleasure of engaging with him for the last few months very extensively on the G20, and I'm delighted that engaging with him with a clear, sharp mind in terms of what we need to achieve and what we need to deliver, which is it's such a pleasure to engage with at that point of time. Mr. Sarkar, may I now invite you into come and address the RFF and share your thoughts with us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.